Can a blue pen erase somebody from history? Welcome to Mariculture Minute, a podcast about seaweed, shellfish, and salmon in Alaska. I'm Jeremiah Murphy, and today, a mystery. Whatever happened to Mary L. Schafer? Back in the Mariculture Minute episode list, you might see 3 Mariculture Minute episodes devoted to paralytic shellfish toxin. It's a natural toxin that can sometimes get in shellfish, and it can be deadly. But we have all sorts of cool ways to test for it, and commercial shellfish in Alaska, they're all tested for it. So if you get something in a restaurant or buy something from the store, like oysters or whatever, those are safe. But in those episodes, I referred to an old typewritten report I found at the library. The Public Health Significance of Paralytic Shellfish Poison, a review of literature and unpublished research. Published in 1956, this report has 5 authors. They come from the Robert A. Taft Sanitary Engineering Center in Cincinnati, Ohio, the Milk and Food Program, which I think is like an old government federal program thing from the 50s, and the military's Chemical Corps. The report has 37 pages, and they're packed with history, science, and proposed tools for the prevention of paralytic shellfish poisoning. We're talking lab testing methods to find the nasty toxins in shellfish. Today we have a few different tests. The state of Alaska uses mice for commercial testing. I think the state of Alaska also might have approved a new chemical test. I'd have to verify that. And the local tribe here in Sitka, the Sitka tribe of Alaska, uses a receptor binding assay, which we've covered in a previous episode. Now, these tests are in a lab. Scientists perform them. They are effective. They work, but they are not very portable. In my research, I've been curious if there was ever a portable test that, say, an oyster farmer or someone harvesting clams could perform right there, in the boat or on the beach. Kind of like, those old COVID tests. Remember those? You just blew some snot into a little tube and you got a color that told you if you were sick or not. Like a field test. That's what I'm trying to say. Is there a field test for paralytic shellfish toxin? Well, in the back of this 1954 report, on page 37, the final paragraph before the bibliography, you might call this the last word of these 5 scientists, that final paragraph is crossed out in blue pen with a big X. It's crossed out twice. But you can still read it. It says, another method which offers some promise of being useful as a field test is the chromate color test. Okay, I'm going to keep reading, but bear in mind I'm no chemist, and it's going to get a little sciencey. Here we go, I'll start over. Quote, another method which offers some promise of being useful as a field test is the chromate color test. A brief description of this test is as follows. When an aqueous solution containing microgram quantities of shellfish poison and milligram quantities of chromium, parentheses, Roman numeral 6, parentheses, H2CrO4, is made acidic, a blue color develops which is proportional to the amount of poison present. It has been possible to use a modification of this test in an assay of the acid extract of some species of clams. Why was this crossed out? That's my question. But in the paragraph, there is a citation, number 40. Let's hit up the bibliography that starts on the next page. Oh, there's number 40. Oh no, it's crossed out with thick, inky lines. But if I take a picture with my phone and zoom it up, I can make out the letters. Schafer, Mary, unpublished data of SEC. Why was it crossed out? I mean, My initial impulse was, hey, maybe somebody was embarrassed the report contained a reference to unpublished data, but unpublished data is in the title of the report, a review of literature and unpublished data. And also, it's a typewritten report, and it's already typed there in the bibliography. It could have been excluded in an earlier draft. And also, the paragraph that's crossed out, it doesn't seem like that definitive. It seems to, suggest something that would benefit from future study. But anyway, I want to find out who this Mary Schafer is. And I'll admit, it took me a while because I didn't find a whole lot on the internet. It's a fairly common name. But then I realized I was being a little stupid because I looked back on the cover of the report and saw that the answer might be right there in front of me. One of the authors is written as M.L. Schafer from the Robert A. Taft Sanitary Engineering Center in Cincinnati, Ohio. Sanitary Engineering Center abbreviates as SEC. The crossed out reference, number 40 in the bibliography, cites Mary Schafer, unpublished data of SEC. I think this is that same person. This unpublished data was from one of the report's authors, Mary L. Schafer. But why was it crossed out? And whatever happened to this promising chromate color field test? Why is it Mary Schafer on the front page Mary Schafer in the bibliography and M.L. Schafer on the report's front page? Well, with this new knowledge, I've been able to somewhat trace Mary L. Schafer's prolific career in public health. She wrote papers on mercury in chicken eggs. Schafer researched the presence of that pesticide DDT in human blood. An earlier paper about preparing paralytic shellfish toxins for testing. And then in 1960, so this is around 4 or 5, 6 years after the paragraph that we were talking about before, in 1960, it looks like Schafer was part of a research team working for the U.S. Army Chemical Corps on the haptenic properties of paralytic shellfish poison. There's a couple declassified progress reports online. You can find on, I think, some of the Army's website. I'll provide links in the show notes. I tried looking up the definition of haptenic, and my education fails me on this one. I think it has something to do with antigens and immunology, which makes sense because according to the report, one of the purposes of the project was, quote, to lay the groundwork for immunization of humans against the poison. And the poison we're talking about is paralytic shellfish poison. That was 1960, over 60 years ago. This research project was to see if we could immunize people against paralytic shellfish poison. The Army was trying to find that out, which makes sense because paralytic shellfish toxin can be weaponized. You only need like a small amount to kill somebody. Wow, this is fascinating. I'll post the reports in the show notes. And from my reading, so I'm not a chemist. I read a few scientific reports. But from my reading, it looks like they were having trouble immunizing test animals for PSP. But it looks like they were onto something. They cite difficulties they want to try to overcome, and so I'd be interested to see if somebody with a little more biomedical background has anything to say about this. But maybe it didn't pan out, or maybe the funding stopped. Classic reason why research stops, the money runs out. Or maybe, like I've been saying, maybe I'm not very good at reading scientific papers from 1960. But I'm curious where this work led. And also, in terms of Schafer, I found some of her papers going into the 80s. It looks like she did some interesting research into food poisoning of canned goods, which also might have some applications to mariculture with, canned oysters and canned fish. And I did find Mary Schafer's obituary. It's in a newspaper called the Princeton Clarion, and she passed away at 87 years old in 2003. I'll read some of her obituary here. So it says, Mary Schafer, quote, retired in 1984 from working in the Food and Drug Administration at Cincinnati in the Division of Microbial Biochemistry. She was also in the U.S. Army from 1941 until 1946 and was sent to England just before D-Day. She worked as a dietitian prior to joining the Army. She was a member of Hyde Park Community United Methodist Church in Cincinnati. She graduated from Purdue University in 1938 with a B.S. in nutrition. She completed her internship and received her R.D. in 1939 in Cleveland, Ohio. In 1946, she attended Columbia University and obtained her M.S. in nutrition in 1949. She later received her Ph.D. in chemistry from Purdue in 1955 and began her job with the Food and Drug Administration in Cincinnati. During her career, she developed a method for finding contaminants in food and water using gas chromatography. Wow, it sounds like Mary Schafer was a real public health hero. But I'm still curious why the field test stuff was crossed out from that 1954 report, and her work into immunizing people against PSP, doing that for the Army. I wonder what happened there. Mary Schafer sounds fascinating. I'll add links to her research and papers that I found in the shell notes. But if any chemists or biomedical people, scientists out there can shed some light on this chromate color test or the haptenic properties of paralytic shellfish poison, I'd be curious what you have to say. Feel free to contact me at kelpshow.com or on Instagram at kelpshow. Perhaps it all led nowhere, or maybe there's some valuable research sitting in some old typewritten report, shelved in a remote Alaskan library. The mystery continues. Special thanks to the Sitka Public Library and Google Scholar for this episode, and special thanks to W for providing the music. Check out the shell notes at kelpshow.com. You can find Mariculture Minute, this podcast, on all the usual podcast places, and on Instagram at Kelp Show. From Sitka, Alaska, I'm Jeremiah Murphy.